So, so maybe in case there's somebody watching at home, we're waiting for another member of our committee to show up, because at the moment we have 4 out of 9. So we're not quite at good enough strength. Yes, Representative Weiler.
Vice Chair is here, thinking of signing him.
Oh, can you do that at the last minute? Or I've always been told you need like a whole week or something, you know? Oh, if we don't exact, he could just sit down. Yeah, I suppose. Okay. But in any case, we're slightly delayed here.
He is a member of the committee.
All right. All right, we're going to get started because the sponsor of the second bill at 10:30 has a really tight schedule. So, and we have now a quorum. So, thank you to Representative Hewitt. So let's get started on House Bill 194, and I'll recognize the sponsor, Representative Germana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My idea, thinking about also working with a lot of educators in Cheshire County over the years and seeing a lot of the great work they do, particularly for National History Day, I thought it would be really great if there was just one place on a state website that you could go and you could see the list of all of the public monuments in the state. If you wanted to go visit all of the war memorials, for example, in the state, they would all be listed there. You could see where they were. And so that was just the impetus for the bill, is the way that we use monuments for education. Right? And if we want young people in New Hampshire to really feel rooted and grounded in the state and to appreciate the rich history and the cultures of the state, to stay here or to come back here after college. This is obviously an issue that we have for the state in terms of a lot of young people who go out of state for school and unfortunately don't come back. I think that if they feel rooted in the history and the cultures of our state, I think that that would help them see New Hampshire as a place where they do want to be in the long run and raise their families. So I submitted the bill. I was a newbie. I had been elected, but I had not been seated, when I submitted this bill in the first place, and I sent it to the wrong department. I am, as I said, a historian, so I think about archives. You archive things, you archive, whatever. So I had to go to the archives. That was the wrong place, and they don't have a position where somebody would do that work. And so then I worked with Director Wilson, who will be speaking after me at the Division of Historical Resources, to amend the bill to make sure, number one, it was going to the right place, and number two, so that the amendment was written specifically in a way that would allow the division to do the work without additional resources, that it fits within the resources that they currently have. So the amendment was written, as I said, specifically with the director to serve those purposes, right? So what it would be is a very simple list. The kind of qualifying, important qualifying phrase in the bill itself is that it is a list of publicly maintained monuments. There's a kind of a question of, well, what's a monument? And then that can get a little sticky. In this case, it is publicly maintained. And what that means is that every town, right, has a list of the monuments it maintains. So this is a finite list of objects in the state. So the division, as Director Wilson will testify, can reach out to localities. They will send in the information, and it will all be put on a list that is then put up for anyone in the state to access. And I could dream about someday maybe we could find some grant money from the NEH or some other source that would allow us to kind of build it out as an educational tool. But I think this is an important step, as I said, for teachers, for students, and also for anybody in the state who wants to be able to visit something like all of our war memorials. There's one place where you could find all of that information. So that is a really quick overview. As I said, the director will testify to the ability of the division to perform the work without any additional resources.
All right, thank you, Representative. Does the committee have any questions? No? Well, I'll ask one, why not? Do you see this list as just a bare bones kind of spreadsheet kind of list? The name of the thing, the place where it is, maybe the year it was created or something like that? Or is this going to be more of a more interesting website that has photos and the descriptions and stuff like that?
Thank you for the question. To begin with, it'll be a very bare bones list. Again, the purpose was to have it be something that the division can do without additional resources, and the director could speak to what exactly that involves. My understanding is it's just a straightforward list. And I do want to also add, which I should have in my introductory remarks, that the reason why it is a bill is because in order to have the division update the list every 10 years, as the director will testify, that has to be in statute. So that is the part of the bill that requires a change to the statute. But as far as I understand it, it will begin as a pretty straightforward list without many bells or whistles.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Grassi.
I just have a brief comment. Would you believe that one of the towns I worked with, we actually did this with some of our historic structures in the community as part of our master plan. We went out and actually geo-referenced the location and then tagged photos to it. And the geo-referencing was actually done by Eagle Scout that went out and actually did that work. We'd assign them to a neighborhood and go out and just go down this street and every time you come to one of these addresses, just hit the button. And it worked out reasonably well.
I would have no trouble believing that at all.
Thank you, Representative. So do we need to do the pink card thing? Would that help you, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think usually I do have it in the
Okay.
file. Do we have pink
Yeah.
cards down there?
Mike, could you find a small stack? And so Representative Germani, fill one out, please. Yeah. All right. Well, anyways, thank you. So, thank you. Director Wilson, did you want to weigh in? Oh, here we go.
Peter.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
So the representative basically explained all of my testimony, which I thank him for. So I simply would assign some,
And
oh,
could
I'm
you
sorry.
just say who you are for the record?
Absolutely,
et
my
cetera?
apologies. I'm Ben Wilson. I'm the director of the Division of Historical Resources, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. So I would simply assign somebody in our office, as I do with other projects, to write a letter or send an email to town administrators and historical societies within towns and cities, as well as the state, because the state maintains monuments, for instance, out on the State House lawn. So I would send a letter to Commissioner Arlinghouse. And as the representative mentioned, every entity has a list of the things that they ask their local DPWs to maintain. And so much like having a local circuit rider, Eagle Scout, do that work, we wouldn't have to employ anybody to go out and physically find these locations, because they are maintained, publicly maintained, and we wouldn't expand beyond that unless there was actual funding to make that happen. So I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? No. Yes, Representative Ebel.
Thank you. So just to sort of restate the situation, the bill was introduced to require the creation of this listing. It has a fiscal note of a couple $100,000, give or take, but you're saying now that that money isn't needed to put this bill into action if it passes.
That's correct. So when the bill was originally assigned to the Secretary of State's office, they don't employ people that, do these kinds of things. Our division, we have multiple lists, dozens of lists, National Register locations, State Register locations, historic highway markers, you name it. And they're simple lists. They don't have long descriptions, in some case, no photos and that sort of thing. So naturally, the Secretary of State's office put in a fiscal note of, I think it was 117,000 or somewhere around that. And that makes sense, because they were going to have to hire and pay benefits to somebody over the course of a year or two. We won't have to do that. As amended, we don't see any fiscal demands on our division or department.
Thank you. How about to put it on the website? Will you need DOIT, or is that just something you do by yourself pretty easily?
I'm glad you asked. It's a great question. We just launched a brand new website for the division. I want you all to go see it on January 10th last week. And we would just simply create a page, as we do with other new information that we're adding to the website. There's no cost to it.
Great. Any other questions? No? Yes, sorry, Representative Art.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging me. What's the website?
Good question. If you go to our Department of Natural Cultural Resources website, nh.gov, you'll find our division as one of the 5 divisions under that. And
Your division is again?
Sorry?
Your division is again?
is the Division of Historical Resources.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sorry I don't have that exact address, but
Yes, Representative
Question?
Ebel.
Sorry. How quickly do you think you could do this?
another good question. It depends on how quickly our letters are answered or emails are answered. I would expect it would take a year.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here who wishes to weigh in on House Bill 194? All right, seeing none, shall we? Yeah, I guess we're not exacting today, right? So, yeah, so we'll just recess for 11 minutes and be here very promptly at 10:30.
We'll open up the work session on House Bill 318 FN relative to bail commissioners and making appropriations to the judicial branch. Representative Lynn, I see you on the list here.
It's his. Well, it's his. It's his bill. He's
It's-
gotta int-
It's your bill,
Oh, God.
I think. Yeah, that's-
You can give us the history.
yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Representative Bob Lynn from Wyndham. And when you say give you the history, I'm not sure I have enough time to do that. And I'm not sure, frankly, that I intelligently could do that anymore because there have been so many changes that have happened. And I have to extend hearty congratulations to Chairman Roy from Criminal Justice for being able to get everybody together to get the bail reform sort of through on a policy level. The only thing that I raise a question about is simply from a purely financial perspective. Is there, I hope that this committee will look carefully at whether there is really a need for 15 magistrates while you're also going to have all of the bail commissioners. I mean, one of the things that I remember way back when this first started was there was some discussion about whether there should be, whether the judicial branch should hire should they be approved to hire magistrates who would have sort of limited responsibilities, or should there simply be an increase in the number of judges who would be able to have, would be able to do everything, so to speak, within the realm of the judicial branch. My personal sense was it made more sense to hire judges, but I can completely understand that, there's a good argument on the other side to hire magistrates instead. But the one point that I would make is at the time that was originally discussed, the idea, I believe, then there was, the talk was at the time of 15 magistrates. But the idea, at least at that time, was that the magistrates would replace the bail commissioners. As I understand it now, there would be 15 magistrates, but the bail commissioners would also remain. And so my only question is, unless things have changed really, really dramatically, and I'm assuming in the 4 years since I've left the judicial branch, I'm sure there have been changes. I don't have any doubt about that. Particularly, I left before COVID, so I'm sure there have been changes. But I have to say that I do question the idea of the need for 15 magistrates right now, while you also have, keep all the bail commissioners. If the thought was that bail commissioners, as they retire or something, will not be replaced or will be replaced with magistrates, that might make perfect sense to do that. But I just ask this committee to look carefully at the money part of this. And other than that, as I say, I commend Chairman Roy for his efforts in being able to get this together. It seems like, on balance, this is a really good compromise, was able to get everyone together, and I very much support the bill. And other than that, I'm happy to take questions.
As a good representative knows, we try to stay to financial matters, but this is kind of an unruly bunch, so we often venture into
I
policy,
do
but we-
remember from my
You're-
one term on finance. Yes, I remember.
We learned all our lessons from Representative Smith, who's sitting in the back there. Anyway, other questions for the good representative? Yes, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. So I mentioned this earlier to you, but I want to do it in session. We have 3 bills that all seem to be on the same sort of topic of bail and what happens to people between arrest and trial. That's this bill, the one that follows Senate Bill 252, and there's also Senate Bill 249, which also mentions magistrates. Would it make sense to combine all these things into one sort of comprehensive bill so that the governor can see a full plan? Or is this more of a Chinese menu kind of situation where you could take all three or some two or some one, and it would all, it would be, they're all independent?
I would defer to Chairman Roy on this because I have an interest in this area, but I'm not on the Criminal Justice Committee, and I know they have really shepherded this. Just as from a practical standpoint, I would say that unless there are other considerations, it would seem to me that it would make sense to give the governor one bill, but maybe there are other considerations, and that's something that Chairman Roy, I think, could address.
All right, thank you. I'll ask him the same question.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Roy, nice to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here today to discuss the two bail bills you have in front of you. I guess I'll start by addressing some of the concerns we just heard because they're probably the most expensive piece is the magistrate system. The magistrate system, I can understand the former Chief Justice's concerns with regard to what he saw when he was there and the need for him. There's a couple issues. One is the magistrates are doing more than just bail. They are going to be doing certain ministerial duties that will free up circuit court justices by holding hearings and such as needed as dictated by the Chief Justice. They are also, the number 15 was arrived at by, you have one per county. Their duties will be and there's 5 extras to cover vacations and other workload type issues. Their duties will be to supervise all the bail bail commissioners within their counties to ensure that they are trained per the statute that we have put in. That was one of the main concerns we heard, that they weren't getting the proper training they needed. They are to ensure that they are properly staffed and coveraged, because we heard from the jails in the prison that oftentimes they could wait 8-9 hours to get a bail commissioner. They would go through the list and then start through the list again, and people would sit there and wait to get out of jail because there weren't bail commissioners. We had bail commissioners who just resigned and sent an email to somebody. Nobody knew they were gone. So it was kind of chaos is what we heard in the realm of bail commissioners. So there's another issue with regard to bail commissioners as well, with regard to their status. No one's quite sure if they're employees or if they're not. The court treats them as sort of contractors. But if you read the IRS rules, they dictate their place of employment, their time of employment, and how much money they get. That kind of sounds like an employee to the IRS. So the court right now is juggling and dealing with what they're going to do about that. So if they are faced with having to phase out bail commissioners, they'll be in a world of hurt if they don't have somebody there. So that's another look at that. So the magistrates are there to cover a wide range of things. Also, in the statute that we just wrote, at the suggestion of the Senate, and we concurred, there are certain very serious crimes that we are not going to allow bail commissioners to rule on. Those will have to be a magistrate or a judge. We also said that someone can't be held more than 24 hours without somebody ruling on their bailability. Well, that means somebody has to work on a weekend. That will be the job of the magistrates. We conferred with the court over several meetings. They didn't feel it would be logistically possible to have a judge do it because they would have to open the court to do that. And to do that, to open the court, you have to have a clerk and you have to have other employees who are members of a union. So now you have to impact bargain their contract, and it becomes a very expensive quagmire. With the what we figured out is with the magistrates, they can conduct these remotely. They are highly trained, and they will be hearing the more serious crimes over the weekend. So I think I've laid out pretty much what the magistrates are going to do in the justification for the number in their job. And with that, I'm happy to take any other questions because there's so much in the bill I could spend an hour going over. I'd like to also add, I appreciate Representative Lynn giving me credit for this, but I want to make it clear I couldn't have done it without my Democratic colleagues. Representative Harriet Gathright and Representative Muse were key to making sure this all came together.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. So if we look at our fiscal note, it looks like about a 3.16 million ongoing cost. And my understanding of magistrates would be about 2 million or so of that. Do you know what the other million-ish is being used for?
Well, this goes to your question about combining bills. So if the fiscal note is on the bill that has the bail commissioners getting paid, that could be the other 1 million-ish. What we discovered was the way currently the statute is that whoever gets bailed has to pay the bail commissioner. When they pay him, who knows? It's not enforced. So we had bail commissioners telling us about 40% of the time they don't get paid at all. We had one bail commissioner come and testify he was owed $52,000 in over a 2-year period from bails he had done. He gets called out at 3 a.m, goes out, bails somebody out. He doesn't get paid for it. 40% of the time, it's a freebie. That's not how we should be treating people who do this key service for us, because if the bail commissioners all quit tomorrow, our criminal justice system would come to a screeching halt. So what we came up with was, okay, the court is going to pay the bail commissioners their fee, and the court can recover the money from the defendant. The way it is now, the bail commissioner, if he really wanted to get paid, would actually have to sue a defendant to get his money. And, you know, it would cost them money to actually prosecute that case. So with the court's ability to order fines and payments, they are well better placed to recoup that money than the bail commissioners were. So in the bill, we put the power for the court, and they're allowed to give up to a year to pay the money. $50, you don't have it right now, that's fine. You've got a whole year to pay us. As long as they get it back into the coffers and it goes back into their money, hopefully that will offset a large portion of that extra $2 million.
Further question?
Thank you. So when you say that they're not getting paid the $40. Is that
That's
what
all
you're
they
saying?
do get paid. That's
Okay,
it.
gotcha.
Yeah, they have no salary or stipend, anything.
Can you give us any statistics in general? How many bail commissioners are there? How many cases do they deal with, you know, roughly?
I can give you, first we can talk about the bail commissioners. Currently, we think there's about 100. The fact that I have to say think is indicative of a problem. No one knows for sure. Hence, we need this supervisory thing. The judges are supposed to do it. If you've seen their court caseloads, they just don't have time. This is such a ministerial type of thing. So no one's really sure how many. We guess about 100, that give or take. Their cases, I can't really say. They're you know, they deal with every single arrest. So we're looking in the thousands per year. So it's quite significant. Every single person who's arrested in New Hampshire, unless it's a warrant that says no bail, is entitled to bail. And the vast majority are entitled to bail. So the bail commissioners are called on every single arrest.
So one more. You heard Representative Lynn say that he thinks 15 is too many. And you yourself said that they're going to do their work online, and certain counties are very small compared to others, right? I've heard it said that all of Coas is smaller than Portsmouth, for example, right?
Yeah.
So since it's online, could maybe one handle multiple counties, and therefore we don't need all 15?
I'm not sure if I said it online. If I did, I misspoke. There's no mandate that it be online. They're just going to handle them on the weekends. So they may very well have to go out to do it in person to look at the case file. One of the problems we have in New Hampshire and I tried to address it in this, and it was a bridge too far, is our electronic communication system between the branches, judicial, executive, as far as law enforcement goes, is horrific. So bail commissioners, when they go to do a bail, they rely on the police department to give them a printed copy of a defendant's record. So, because it's illegal to transmit it through email. So they kind of have to go in person most of the time. And the problem is some of our, to your point, some of our distant counties up there, our friends, they don't even have a computer terminal in their police department to print the record. So they have to go to a local county jail. They'll print the criminal record, then they'll bring it back to show the bail commissioner. So it gets quite complicated. Whether or not we could shave off one or two is open for debate as far as how many. This was the number that I was given. We looked at the justification. We felt that logistic-wise, not financially, but policy logistic-wise, it made sense. Whether that ends up being too many but we all know that once a position's there, the position's there. So I would say that it's possible that they don't need 15. They maybe could get by with 12. But I would hesitate to do it and then have to come back at this again and say we're short. But that's fortunately your decision to make.
Representative Hewitt, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm on the other end of this. I was a district court judge for quite a few years. The features of this whole problem involve money and they involve politics. So you haven't got an easy job. The theory is that the bail commissioners were created for the purpose of facilitating compliance with the Constitution. They were, as a general rule, not very well educated in their job, although they were citizens who had a general working knowledge of the government and of that sort of thing. But getting them out and working was a difficult thing. I think I made a record one year of having issued a set bail in the middle of the night for somebody in Keene, about a dozen times. This isn't something that's going to end easily because, number one, as you said, the bail commissioners are not paid on a regular or a basis which you can identify, because they collect from the defendant. Well, let's face it, a lot of the bail commissioners do most of their business at night, because in the daytime people can go to the courthouse and they can go, all kinds of things can be done. But in the middle of the night, there are a lot of crimes committed in New Hampshire. And each one of those crimes, if the perpetrator is caught, and that sets off the bail commissioner situation, because the Constitution says how long you can hang on to them. Right? And that's something that's kind of, working along. Maybe some of them may get out a little bit longer than one would like. Sometimes in terms of days, and I've heard of a couple of cases in terms of weeks that they got held before they could post bail, and that was perfectly logical because they didn't have any money with which to post bail. And if they couldn't post bail, they couldn't get out. And I've watched this happen since I've happily retired. I've watched this happen. I have a lot of friends who are bail commissioners. Because I dealt with all the bail commissioners in Belknap County, because Lithonia was the only place that had a court that could administer this sort of thing. And not all the courts have judges who are interested in this stuff either. And it's a difficult situation. The law is not an easy thing to understand. And for somebody who's an auto mechanic or who's a bank teller or something, in the middle of the night to understand the complexities of a federal offense as opposed to a state offense and all that stuff is very difficult. And I hope that the committee, and I hope that the legislature takes a long, hard look at this and doesn't fall in the trap of funding more small businesses within the court system and within the state, because that's going to cost a lot of money eventually. And there's no need for it if it's done right. So I wish you all the luck in the world. Right?
Thank you.
Because I sat with this and listened to people and listened to the bail commissioners complain, and some of them run off at the mouth for a long time about their sad situation. And you couldn't sit there and listen to it and not agree. That's the trouble. You couldn't say, you're full of baloney. Because they weren't full of baloney. They were absolutely right. We were wrong, and the people that were wrong the most were the local governments who refused to participate in the funding of all of this.
Yeah.
So I wish you all the luck in the world, and there are a lot of questions that need to be answered before you can get through it.
Yeah. To your point with regard to the training or their experience to be able to make discernments about complicated issues regarding bail, even to questions regarding fugitive from justice warrants and things of this nature. It's very complex. That's why we mandated before they come on board, they get 40 hours of training. And they get annual training on any updates in the law. So the days of, here you go, go get them are gone. They will be trained. And that's another reason that the magistrates had to have, the position was classified as it was. They have to be educated. They have to be educated in the law. What we were concerned about is, a bunch of retired police chiefs looking to add to their retirement. No, we want hopefully attorneys. And so we needed a position classified at that rank that would support that kind of salary. So it is very key that we have intelligent people making these decisions, not only to ensure defendants get their fair hearing, but to also make sure that we're not exposing the state to liability for lawsuits because bad decisions were made by untrained people in the middle of the night.
Are there further questions? Representative Weiler, followed by Representative Ebel.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the idea of having 15, you talked about one per county, and obviously so is this a job we show up whenever the court's in session rather than a bail commissioner that's sitting at home unless he gets called?
Oh, no, this is a report for work job.
Report for work whenever the court is in
Yeah,
session.
and
So
I would imagine and I tried not to micromanage the judicial branch. So, but it's a full-time job. My understanding is they're looking at having them on a rotating schedule so that, some will work weekends this week or for a month and then the next one, that type of thing. Because that's why you need more than just one per county, because you don't want one working every weekend all year long. So I believe that they're going to look into rotating it but it's a show up for work at your office every working day type of job.
So we start with Hillsborough having two county courts anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So that already brings it to 11. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Some, like the representative said, some of them, that you go up there, you might have one that part-time, but other areas make up for that. So.
Yeah, thank you for all your work on this. It's just been an unbelievable process, I know. I just want to make sure I have it right in the notes. So you said that there's a magistrate for every county plus 5 to fill in for, okay. And then the number or the recommended number you got from the judicial branch, are they the ones that provided the?
Yes, they are. What we did is we talked to the judicial branch, we talked to the attorney general, the chiefs of police, everybody, in the jails, and we looked at, how many cases, how often are they called, how many weekend calls, and we submitted that to the judicial branch to say, look, what do you need to be able to do this? And they were given two options. Would you need to open the courts on the weekends? We pursued that a little bit, and we realized that was not the road to go down. We went back and said, okay, let's look at the magistrates again. We know that that position was already floated several years ago in a concept of replacing bail commissioners. That bill didn't go anywhere at the time because you cannot replace over 100. We should have about 130 bail commissioners with 15 people. It's just not feasible. It just wouldn't happen. But you can augment them and maybe limit the number, shrink the number of bail commissioners eventually once you have trained people in place. But the 15 we got from the court, and they based it on the coverage that they would have to do, anticipating vacations and a rotating shift so that they didn't have to work every weekend. Because if you're arrested on Saturday, you have to get bailed on a Sunday. So it's not just Saturdays. They have to work Saturdays, Sundays. If it's Christmas, if it's a holiday, those magistrates have to be available because no one can be held for more than 24 hours on that list of crimes. So someone has to be available 24/7, 365 days a year throughout the entire state.
Just ask a follow-up. Okay, well, I think that's really important testimony because it sounds to me like you did a massive amount of research to ultimately to give to the judicial branch and for them to come up with the number that's needed. It's not like something that just kind of evolved.
Yeah, this was definitely not pulled out of the air type of thing. I gave them parameters, what I thought we needed, and what I would be asking of the judicial branch, and they said this is what we can do and this is what we need. Whether or not that ends up being a little too much, you guys know better than I how the branches request money and how they cushion. I mean, do they assume you're going to cut some anyway? And I don't know. I'm a policy guy. Your money gonna, so I don't know. I know the policy is very sound. The cost, I don't know.
So I have just a couple of questions. So I served as a bail commissioner in the Milford District Court for a number of years. And at the time, the local district court judge appointed you, and there was, to Representative Hewitt's comment, I was probably not well educated to take the position, but I see here it says 15 highly qualified magistrates. What are those qualifications? Do you know that makes them highly qualified?
Yes, we originally I wanted to put in there they had to be an attorney, and another branch of government weighed in and said, well, if you do that, it's going to cause problems as far as if we can't fill the positions, it doesn't let us pick someone, for example, with a master's degree or someone with a significant experience. So I said, well, so the human resources people said that it's better to classify the job at a job classification level, and then the criteria are kind of built into those. So we're talking about people with at least advanced degrees is what I was told. So it's not going to be, a retired police sergeant coming in there, unless he has degrees that would actually qualify for him for that step that they've qualified the position at. Again, this is kind of something where I'm going to lean on you to say I don't really know how the step systems work and the salary systems work. I would assume that you guys are experts in that, and you might be able to tell me.
We'll try, but with the difficulty we're having finding qualified people for anything.
Exactly.
Was there any thought given to how soon would you get the 15 qualified magistrates? Is it going to take a couple of years, or are there people lining up at your door banging on it to say we're qualified to do this new role?
Well, when I came out and said, listen, I want these to be attorneys, they went, well, you realize we can't get attorneys to fill our regular jobs right now, never mind someone who's going to work on the weekends. So that's why they said, look, you have to make it, if you limit us to just attorneys, we may not be able to fill these for years, and we might never get to 15. They said it's better to qualify it at a step that we could say this person has to be qualified and educated, but doesn't necessarily have to be a member of the bar. So that's what we agreed to as a compromise. So they said it could take about a year, hopefully. And that's another good point, though. When we say 15, they might never get 15. They, at the salary it's paying, even though it's good, you could still go to a firm or somewhere else and make much more money. So you are going to be looking at people that are, interested in that type of work, and that's what they want to do. It's not going to be someone in there trying to make a career of it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Are there further questions for Chairman Roy? Yes, Professor.
Thank you. Let me ask you the question I asked Representative Lynn at the end. Are you familiar with this bill, the next one, Senate Bill 252 and Senate Bill 249? Are these all independent, or are they somehow connected? Or?
So there was a lot of debate on how we should best do this at the beginning. Should we make one omnibus bill? And our feeling was, well, first of all, the temperature of the House is we don't like omnibus bills. And each of these things does a very detailed thing, but yet they can't work without the other one. So if you pull the magistrates out, the bail changes with regard to what people can be held and not held falls apart. So the whole thing is connected, but for the purposes of getting it through the House, so it didn't look like we were trying to pack a bill in the middle of the night, we said, let's keep it clear, keep it transparent, keep it separate. Should you decide, or the Senate decide, to cobble it together for the governor, I have no objections. But to pull something aside and say, we're not going to do this piece, the whole thing falls apart.
You may.
So if we did decide to go that way with a single bill,
Yes.
would it make sense that it sounds like these are significant changes from what the Senate sent us?
Yes.
So it might make sense to do that with a House bill rather than the Senate bill, because if you sent back a Senate bill, it would just be committee of conference.
Yes.
But if you sent them a House bill, then they have a full hearing and the whole works.
Yeah,
right?
we looked at that as, okay, maybe if we make one thing and put it in the Senate bill, they can just vote to concur, and that piece of the bill will go through. But then they're going to hold hearings on the other stuff anyway. So I would leave it to your wisdom whether you think that's a better strategic move at this point. Just keep in mind, I believe that our bail reform bills are not just House bills. One of the Senate bills is part of it. So I'm not sure how you would amend that all into one bill, if that's even logistically possible. And I believe they just passed another bail bill. So when I saw that, I just almost quit.
Thank you.
Representative Sweeney or Grassi, you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
So just from a hiring standpoint, if you didn't get all the magistrates that you needed, which is as likely as not, might they share some of the burden between counties? Or would you still think that there would just be a magistrate per county?
I would think they would do whatever we told them to do and whatever staff we give them to do it. That being said, that's what they told me they needed and they thought. I know that if you reduce the number of magistrates, it's not going to kill the policy behind the bill. It may make it tougher to implement. I'm in a position, I don't want to give anyone any excuses to say, well, it's not working because you didn't do this, or we asked for that and you didn't give it to us. I've dealt with our friends across the other side, in the other body, and it got pretty heated at our last committee of conference, and there were a lot of fingers pointed. No more. We're done. We did what you asked. We did what the court asked. We did what the law enforcement asked. We got everyone. So I don't want anyone coming back later saying, well, it would have worked but for. So that's where I'm at on that.
Well, I know I speak for everyone here. We're glad you are where you are with chairing the Criminal Justice Committee. You do a great job.
I really appreciate that. I'm honored by it. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Further questions on, or anyone out there on 318 that would like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the work session on 318. Representative McGuire, are you planning to bring an amendment forward to maybe consolidate, or you have some ideas, or?
It's way too early. So, thank you for the question.
I figured that was stirring around in your mind.
So what's going on in my mind is that all of the bills that we have that spend money and we're likely to want to pass them, I'm tending to think we should not exec them or finalize them until March. Because by then we'll know what's going on in other divisions with other bills. We'll have a total, of how much everything is going to cost and what our resources are and stuff like that. So I think we have some time to let these percolate and think about and so on. I mean, there's some bills, like the first one had no fiscal impact that we could pass pretty quickly, I would think. And maybe there's a few others that are just obvious no's and we ITL pretty quickly. But for things like this, where almost certainly we want to pass something, I would think we have some time to think about them. That's my thought.
No, it's a good point. You okay with that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, you will note, Division Two, I have a bill, say this, money that all went stuck into the Education Trust Fund
We noticed that.
because they ignored our amendment and just put in their own and put in far more money than even the governor's budget had. And so here's 200 million that's just can't be used for anything else, but of course every school district's asking for a new building because of that money sitting out there. So that hopefully that will come and will pass and we'll move that money from Education Trust Fund to general fund, and then we'll have more flexibility. As you say, we'll know later on in the session, do we have that extra money? Plus, we're going to have meetings today with the court system about this, all these monies that they're paying out for the victims of the Sununu litigation, which the judge and I have had discussions. It does seem it's excessive. We gave them a budget. We wish they'd stay within it. So we're going to have those discussions here, both today and within fiscal. But we may have to come up with some more money for that. But anyway, yeah, I'm hoping that that will pass. And then things like this that we'll be seeing in the meantime, we'll get all these other bills spending money. So we want to know where we've got money to spend, if any.
Thanks, Ken. So moving, it's 11 o'clock or thereabouts. Senate Bill 252, relative to the release of defendants pending trial, etc. Is someone here to speak to that? I saw you were on the list. Yeah, if there's nobody else wishing. Though I see the Secretary of State here, and I'm wondering, maybe he didn't get the message about one of the other bills that was.
House Bill 13, was it coming up or postponed?
No.
It is not. So apparently there was a problem. It came to us and it should have gone to the policy committee or something like that. But
I can explain.
yeah, Representative McGuire.
Yeah, so
Representative McGuire has it.
I'll just explain. So we only see things in division as a second committee. When we have a bill that's brand new like this one, we have a full committee public hearing first, so we made a mistake and we didn't realize that it was new and not arriving via some other committee. So that's the problem. So we'll be in the big room at some point.
Yeah, there should have been a notice. So sorry you didn't get it, but
Yeah.
it went out last week. But
Thank you.
I figured you must.
Over here and see you.
It was nice to see you. I know you're very busy or
some
should
of
be
your steps
busy
in.
next week, right?
Slowly.
Yeah, slow week.
We-
Yeah, take care. Chairman Roy.
It's nice to see all of you again. Thank you very much. Representative Terry Roy, Rockingham 31, Chairman Criminal Justice. On the bill before you now, I would just reiterate everything I said 5 minutes ago. They're all interlinked. They're all tied together. And I think it would be better if you've looked at the bill. If you had certain questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you. Do we have a new fiscal note? Yes, we
Nope.
do. Uh-huh.
Dated 160.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't really looked at it. All right, so this says that we're going to be spending 1.7 million in the first year. Is that to create some kind of computer system or something like that?
If I could just for a second, because I haven't seen a new fiscal note, I just need to look at it.
Mr. Hoffman?
That amount comes from the appropriations in the bill, at the end of the bill.
Okay, this may be with regard to the monitoring, I think, electronic monitoring, based on what I'm seeing in the fiscal note. One of the pieces of the bill that we struggled with was dealing with people who were rearrested. As a policy issue, what was happening in many communities, and many communities were very upset about, is you had people that would be arrested, and they're not people that were arrested for horrific crimes. They were what we kind of coined as nuisance crimes. These are your disorderly person, your trespass, your petty theft, your shoplifting. And they'd get bailed on personal recognizance, and a day later or 2 days later, they'd get picked up again. And again, personal recognizance, because these are not, these are Class B misdemeanors. Some of them don't even have jail time if you get found guilty. So we had a revolving door. So we put in there that, okay, you get 2 bites of that apple. If you get arrested again after you're out on bail, you are held. And you can explain to the judge why you cannot seem to refrain from criminal behavior. But one of them was for people who committed domestic violence. People who are accused of domestic violence are entitled to bail like everybody else. But for safety purposes, which was also part of the policy of this bill to enhance public safety, we insisted that people who are released on bail for violating a protective order be given an electronic monitor that can be monitored by someone the court assigns to see that that person stays away from the victim and they're not where they're supposed to be. And keep in mind, this is just people who are violated a protective order, not who just got arrested on the original domestic. So naturally, it is going to have a fiscal note. I would say that if you look at the statutes, the ability to use electronic monitoring has been in our statutes for years. It's just never been implemented. And part of the reason is because we never gave the courts the money and said, do it. We just said you can use electronic monitoring. Well, that's great, but if you don't fund it and tell them do it, it's just worthless words on a piece of paper. So we've actually put teeth into it, and we want it to be implemented. Just about every other state in the country uses these. Our computer and electronics in New Hampshire is so behind the times. We're working on 80s level stuff here. And it's really sad when you know that there's places in this state that don't even have computer terminals to run somebody's record at a police station. One of the worst things that I'd call to your attention is that you can, and some of that money goes to this, is that you can be arrested right now in Concord for an assault and battery. Happens in front of a police officer, he arrests you. You get bailed. And conditions of bail, don't get arrested again, stay out of crime. You could drive to Portsmouth and get arrested again that same day, the next day. The bail commissioner and everyone there thinks it's your first arrest because that's not recorded. It's not shared between so you could theoretically string up 4 or 5 arrests before someone finally realized, hey, wait a minute, you're on bail from an arrest 3 arrests ago, which is very sad in this day and age. We have the capabilities to do this. We just have to tell them to do it and give them the money to do it. So that's about all I can say about that.
So,
Further question?
yeah, thank you. So would this electronic monitoring just be for domestic violence, or would they would it make sense to use it on more things? Because presumably that saves money from not having somebody overnight in a county jail.
It
right?
does, and they are authorized to use it for whatever they see fit. It's in the statute that they can, and we're only mandating it if you're going to let someone out who's violated an order already. You have to use it. I would hope that once they actually have the system in front of them, they say, hey, we can use this on a lot more things. But what I can't do is go in and say, you're going to use it on this offense, this offense. I don't want to, the judges are judges for a reason. So I just want them aware that they have this tool now and that they will hopefully use it. But we're mandating it for that one thing. I think otherwise it would be too complex to micromanage it.
One more. Do you have an idea of numbers, like how many people are on bail for domestic violence, and roughly how long, or are they in that condition?
Sadly, there's going to be several hundred a year who are arrested for violating restraining orders. So if they're going to be entitled to bail, you could be looking at several hundred of these, whether it's at one time. I don't really have it. And that's another problem. If you want to go to the courts and get statistics, be prepared to drive, because every single court is a silo. There's no system where you can go and say, how many domestic arrests were there in the state of New Hampshire last year? No. You start driving, which is horribly sad in this day and age. Again, we are so far behind technology-wise.
Thank
I thought we put in a bill last time you and I talked.
Did in the Senate, killed the money, remember? Yeah. They said, if you don't give me these,
Are they a foreign government or what?
no comment.
Mr. Hoffman, is it possible for you and or Melissa to put something together for us with all the bills that are dealing with this bail issue and the cost of same, kind of following in what Representative McGuire talked about, combining them, but at least give us an idea of collectively the costs of all the different bail bills?
Yes, I can work on that.
Thanks.
It'll take a while.
Mr. Hoffman and Melissa, very good at this stuff, yeah. Are there further questions for Mr. Roy? No? All right, thanks, Terry, for this.
Thank you again.
Yeah, good to see you. You folks out there just interested in what we're doing, or do you have anything to add? All right. All right, seeing no more folks here on 252, we'll close the work session, and we'll come back and visit these areas in a month or two.
Amen.
I can assure you Representative McGuire will be knocking on your door.
Can I just ask, Representative Roy, was there someone in the judicial branch in particular that's?
Yeah, her name is, they switched liaison.
Yeah, Aaron Cregan.
Okay.
She's new, but very good. Yeah.
Would the division like her to come before us so we can talk some of these questions through?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Was that the job that Richard Head had?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's
I was
the name?
surprised he got hired.
Mr. Hoffman, could you check with the judicial branch and see if we could get someone over here to talk to us on these bail issues in the next
Yes.
couple of weeks?
So sometime when you have more,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think we need that.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bingo. I appreciate, but Division One had most of the bills we got.
Yeah. Jeff Strapline is of the OLS is retiring, and his party is right now in the Upham Walker House. If anyone cares to go.
Yes, I will.
Oh, Aaron, E-R-I-N, Cregan, C-R-E-E-G-A-N.
Yeah.
Aaron Cregan. Is here. Thanks. Yeah.